One last thing I'll mention before we jump back to the Steele dossier is just the fact that, I don't know if you've seen these protests over in Hong Kong that have been going on. And it looks like, that first of all, I'll just say, I'm always impressed when in these other countries that maybe aren't even quite as free as we are, when the people stand up for themselves. I mean, what we've seen going on for about 9 months in France with the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests.
Yellow vests.
Yeah. They've been protesting every weekend regularly, just like clockwork. They've all been heading out and protesting, and they've had some effect. Now in Hong Kong.
Ooh.
I mean, you had, and now, did you see the pictures, Pat George?
Oh, yeah. What, 1 million protesters?
Yeah, but I'm saying, do you compare those pictures to what we saw coming out of Venezuela supporting John Guaido?
Right.
Remember? And they said there was 1 million people in the streets, and then they took pictures that had about 100 people in them.
Okay.
Now, these pictures actually look like they show 1 million people to me. I mean, it's a huge group of people have come out and protest, and it's all about extradition to China, right? It's all about the ability for China to come into Hong Kong, which is still semi-autonomous, take a person and say, hey, we're taking you to China for trial. And by the way, folks, do you think you get a fair trial in China? And do you think, what do you think happens if you just never heard from again? Nothing happens. You can't do anything about it. Chinese are just like, we don't know who that guy was. We never heard of him. He didn't exist. Kind of like 1984. It just never existed. So, you can understand why a lot of rich scions in Hong Kong don't want to have China be able to come over and snatch them, take them back to China for some kind of trumped-up trial, and put them into re-education camps or whatever, or maybe just hold them hostage. Take a large cash payment from them for their release, kind of like what we saw in Saudi Arabia a few years ago. So anyway, I think it's great to see folks standing up for themselves. Obviously those people in Hong Kong, they know China better than even we do because they live essentially in China, and they certainly live right next to China.
So do you think it's going to get better or worse for them to be able to stand up for themselves and be as voices as they are now?
Well, I think part of what they were doing was heading off a period where it was about to get a lot worse for them. That's what they're trying to do because their leaders are essentially selling them out.
Who's the female leader in charge?
What was her name?
They don't like her.
I had it here. Let me see here.
I mean, she's she's pro-China.
Right. And that's right. She was going to pass this law.
Yeah.
Carrie Lam is her name. That's right. Carrie Lam. Well, she said she's now understood the crowd and, she's sorry she mishandled this and everything else. I suspect she's on her way out. It sounds like she was probably an agent of Chinese influence, and that's the story. She's put into power or gets herself into the right position and gets into power with a lot of funding or whatever, and then starts to make these subtle changes just to make China more able to control the population. And folks saw through that, and they went out in mass protest. And you just compare that to, some of the things that we've seen going on in our very own country, with some of the social media control where they've just been, turning people's microphones off, and not a peep from us. James Woods gets booted from Twitter. Barely a peep. Everybody's like, oh, well, it's nice knowing James Woods, and we loved hearing from him. But, we'll just continue on. Everybody just continue on like nothing happened. Whereas over in Hong Kong, 1 million people or more go into the streets when things like this happen. So, we have to think about whether or not we've got the wherewithal in this country to turn some of these things around. When you've got the state and the media dead set on making massive changes to our society, to our culture, to our laws. And what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Are we going to stand up? And I'm not suggesting anything more than peaceful protesting. But are we going to stand up and let our voices be heard? And are we going to do anything, or are we just going to suck it up and keep moving forward? And I think our answer is, we've seen. We're just going to suck it up and keep moving forward.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter to a lot of folks until it's on their front doorstep.
And then it's too late to do anything about it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. And if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.